So you think you're observant? Well, would you be able to tell the difference between two almost identical pictures? That's the question that Hyper 3 Studios asks with their game Tiny Lands, a puzzle game built around the idea of telling the difference between two beautifully crafted dioramas. It was a fan favorite when it hit the Switch a few years ago, and now there's a fully loaded edition for the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X that not only includes the wildly varied main game, but also all of the downloadable content and extras. But was it worth the wait? Well, that's what we're about to find out when I review Tiny Lands Deluxe Edition from Defunct Games. The premise here is incredibly simple. The game wants you to compare side-by-side images and then pick out 5 differences. You know, just like the check and double check section found in the back of Highlights magazine. The big innovation here is that the side-by-side images are actually 3-dimensional, allowing us to rotate around the scene and zoom in on all sides of the image. It's not the most exciting video game experience that you'll ever have, but there's something inherently satisfying about finding the minute differences in each scenario. You'll quickly discover that these differences can be pretty much anything from a flag being a different color, a fish being bigger or smaller, a man holding a different position, a sign missing a word, an arrow pointing in the wrong direction, or even a tennis racket being swapped out for a basketball. The game really likes to rely on the old changing color and size difference, but there are some genuinely creative changes that you'll need to keep your eye out for. It helps that there are all kinds of themes and locations to explore when solving the various puzzles. The main game is split up into 10 worlds, each with 10 side-by-side dioramas to complete. We get puzzles based on the Wild West, horror, the ocean, sports, fantasy, space, and even winter. These different themes allow the artist to create a bunch of fun and silly scenarios that both look and feel different, despite the fact that all you're doing is carefully comparing 2 images side by side. Of course, what makes this the Deluxe Edition is that it also features the extra downloadable content from the previous versions of the game. This gives us stages based on Christmas, city life, food, fairy tales, amusement parks, and even a fun desert mystery. These give us even more ambitious stages that tell a funny story and give us even more devious differences. Between the main stages and the inclusion of all the DLC, there are actually 200 dioramas to investigate, which means that you're going to be at this for a while. Now, it is worth pointing out that Tiny Lands was previously released on the Switch back in 2021, where it managed to find an audience thanks to a solid premise and a number of aggressive sales and promotions from publisher Defunct Games. This really is the perfect fit for the handheld mode because Tiny Lands feels like the kind of game that you might want to play when you're on a break or when you're in bed right before going to sleep. I ended up playing through the Deluxe Edition on the PlayStation 5, so I didn't have the luxury of having it on the go. The game does look good on the television, but I can't help but sense that this is not the way it was intended to be played. The good news is that the game plays perfectly fine on the television. You rotate and zoom into the scene with one analog stick, while the other allows you to move the cursor around the screen. There's no ambiguity over where you're clicking, as the magnifying glass has a dot right in the middle. That said, you do have to be extremely precise when you're pointing out the differences, which can be frustrating when you're identifying extremely small changes. From a game perspective, Tiny Lands falls into that cozy and comforting category. Outside of the 5 differences, there really isn't anything here that gets in the way of solving the puzzle. There are no time limits, and the player has an unlimited amount of guesses. So the only real challenge comes from how well they hid the differences. I actually like that the game isn't rushing you, allowing the player to study the 2 sides at their own pace. However, for those looking for anything resembling excitement, well, you might want to look somewhere else. Really, for a game that revolves around comparing side-by-side images, Tiny Lands does this concept about as well as it can be done. The scenarios are often funny, and I like how you can put them together to tell a story. was also impressed with how cluttered some of the stages are. There's a staggering amount of detail in some of the more complicated dioramas, especially when it comes to the water and the city stages. Sure, it may be easy to find 3 or 4 of the more obvious differences, but then they'll sneak in a change that's really easy to miss, simply because there's so much going on. That said, some of the changes left me more annoyed than amused. There are a couple of stages here where you're going to spend way too long comparing dozens of mostly identical windows. That's just not as much fun as searching through an old-timey saloon or diving underwater to compare different shades of coral. I also wish there was a way to gain a hint for when you just can't find that last hidden difference. Like I said, it's often easy to find the first few right out of the gate, but some of those tougher changes may take a while to find. It would have been nice to have an option to push a button to see the general area that I should be focusing on. I mean, it doesn't have to point right to it or anything, but sometimes it would be nice to have a little hint. Look, for those who like this type of observation puzzle, Tinyland's Deluxe Edition offers a lot of content for a reasonable price. The levels are fun to investigate, and the atmosphere is relaxing and cozy. If you missed this when it was first released on the Switch and PC back in 2021, then this repackaged version is worth a look. A very focused and observant look. Tinylands finally comes to the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, complete with all the levels, charm, and downloadable extras that made the Switch version a fan favorite. While comparing side-by-side images may not sound that exciting, there's just something truly satisfying about tracking down all the differences. This Deluxe Edition benefits from a wealth of different themes, locations, and scenarios. And once you get sick of one type of level, the game will shake things up with something new and compelling. I'm sure that some will argue that this is a better portable game, but fans of this style of puzzler will definitely get their money's worth with Tinyland's Deluxe Edition. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite type of puzzle game? Do you like these observant puzzlers? Are you more into the falling blocks type of thing? Maybe you're the person that likes to push crates around. Let's see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back later this week with either another review or a review crew episode. While you wait for that, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.